Hello, this is to introduce a new course for the MOOCs platform titled Ethnography of Speaking. I will be your instructor for this course. My name is Bidisha Som. I am a professor of linguistics from IIT Guwahati, Department of HSS. So, this course is about language, language in a particular format. Language, for example, we can study language through its structure, we can study language through its use, we can study language through its connection with the human mind and brain, and there are multiple ways of looking at human language. In this course, we will look at language from a social perspective. So, this course is as a result primarily about language and it is about society. Society in terms of as a contributing factor to what, when and how we speak what we speak. Because language, there are many factors, there are many reasons why we use language. One of them is the purpose of communicating, purpose of negotiating your place within a society, in a culture, in a given community and so on. So, language is primarily a social tool, social entity, social tool. So, as a result of which society, social practices also has a lot of impact on the way language is used, language is structured, language is understood and so on. In that sense, language and social world are mutually shaping. So, basically in this course we will look at language and its social function, how language structure, language functions and social structures and function interact, how do they come together, because this is one of the core functions of language. One of the greatest scholars in this field, Gill, opens his book with an introduction saying, why is it that two British men, two strangers sitting in a train compartment who do not know each other start a conversation about something as random as weather? Is it because they are climatologists or is it because they just want to fill the vacuum? And by starting a conversation about something as neutral as the weather, you strike a sort of you strike a conversation that can be the beginning of getting to know the other person, getting to know each other better, and then eventually you can talk more about other things. You can become friends and so on. So, this is a very good use of language in a very neutral way, is a very good way of opening a conversation. That is for British scenario. It may not be the same for every culture. So, that is what a crucial thing about language is. In Indian scenario, it might be something completely different, depending on the social practices, depending on the participants in the conversation and so on and so forth. So, the underlined aspect of this course will be the language in its the particular aspect of language, which is to establish and maintain relationship with people. Establish and maintain both. How do we create relationship with people and how do we maintain them? What are the factors responsible? All of these will be covered in this course. Now, when we talk about language and communication in terms of its social practices or social structures, let us say, there are multiple ways of looking at it. There are a number of discipline, you can call them sub-discipline as well, that have looked at this particular feature, but from a slightly different approach, slightly different focal point. So, when we talk about socio-linguistics, we talk about language and society. So, the linguistic perspective, as in how what kind of social structures and how are they connected to the language structures. That is the linguistic or socio-linguistic perspective. Similarly, ethnographic approach may look at language and society in terms of cultural practices. Right, what are the culture specific practices that affect language specific structures? That is another way of looking at the overall, the bigger picture. Similarly, social psychology looks at social contract and its interaction with language. And then last but not the least, this is a comparatively recent phenomenon. This is a comparatively new domain, which is the domain of social cognition and neuroscience combined together. So, we look at language and meaning with respect to social cognition and its underlying neural structures. So, social neuroscience and social cognition, these are new ways of looking at it. So, in this course what we will try to do is we will primarily look at language and society from linguistic and social practices perspective, but we will also include some amount of ethnographic information, some amount of ethnographic literature and some amount of psychological literature, literature from social psychology particularly, and towards the end of the course we will also include a bit of social neuroscience in order to give you a holistic understanding of the whole topic that we have at hand. So, in order to do that, this is how I have broken down the entire course material into 8 modules. So, each week we will have one module. So, 8 weeks, 8 modules, except that week 5 and 6 will be covering one particular module, that is a slightly lengthy module. So, week 1 we will have an introductory module where we will trace the history of language, studying language from social perspective, how we have various scholars in that domain and so on, and eventually we will have language and variations from different perspectives, speech communities and so on. So, let us look at them a little bit in detail. These are the 8 modules as I just said. So, 8 weeks and 8 module. Each module will have 5 lectures most of the time except couple of 2 weeks in between. So, week 1 as I was just explaining, this will set the tone of the entire course. We will look at the historical factors and some of the most important figures, scholars who have shaped the discourse in this from this perspective, and also around at the same time we will also introduce the other domains that have looked at it. So, ethnographic perspective, neuroscience perspective, other sociolinguistic perspectives, all of that we will give a brief overview from all of these various angles, and then we will set the tone. And then week 2 will have language variation. So, we will look at language variation from 2 different perspectives. In week 2 we will look at the variation from a speaker oriented perspective. So, depending on the various speaker dependent variables like race, ethnicity, class, gender, this kind of features, how they shape language structure and language usage, and how that that creates variation in the language, that is what we will cover in week 2. Week 3 we will look at language variation from a different perspective. For example, it is more of a linguistic perspective. For example, in the domain of usage and the function of language. So, we will have discussion on style, on register, politeness strategies, and so while we will talk about these these technical terms, we will also bring in the ethnographic account into this. So, for example, how does politeness, so politeness strategy is a very specific thing in language society interaction, and that is very culture dependent. Every situation, every culture, every society has its own way of signaling politeness. So, thereby we will look at some ethnographic data there. So, for each module, whenever the way it is possible, we will look at case studies, we will look at ethnographic account as well as sociolinguistic case studies to give you a broader overview. Week 4 we will look at speech community. There we will look at certain important variables like attitude, the socialization, the identity factor, ideology, how all these things actually what are the implications of these important variables in terms of how a speech community behaves and how they carry forward the language or they do not carry forward the language, as the case may be. Week 5 and 6 we will be dedicating to one module which is on language contact. This is a very important topic, hence we will focus more lectures on this, we will dedicate more lectures on this. So, week 5 and 6 will be looking at it. So, various kinds of reasons of language contact, historically speaking, there have been various ways in which languages and communities have come in contact, and depending on the nature of the contact, the result has also been different. different. Hence, it needs a bit of a detailed discussion, and that is what we will do. Week 7 will be looking at the applied domains. After we have looked at all these various angles of language and society interaction, then we will look at how this understanding shapes certain applied domains like language policy. How is language policy of a nation shaped, what are the factors that are taken into account, and how does it eventually result into what kind of outcomes. So, and also while doing this we will also look at certain emergent issues. Society, so language and society both are ever evolving. Depending on the social structure and how they change, language also changes, and as a result of which the government policies also change. One of the current issues, for example, is immigration. So, how this also has impacted language policies in different countries, language policies in terms of education, in terms of administration, and so on and so forth. So, all these applied real life domains will be discussed in week 7. And then week 8, which is the last week, last module, here we will look at some of the recent developments within this broader domain. So, here we will bring in the idea of cognitive science and idea of neuroscience and the latest findings in this kind of a research. So, what kind of neural underpinnings do we see in terms of the social function of language? Does it have any deeper impact, or is it just a way of talking? One society speaks like this, another society speaks like that, another one society, one community uses politeness strategies in such a way, another community in another way, and so on. But is it only that? Does it have any deeper impact? Does it have any implication in terms of our brain, in terms of the way we process this information, our brain processes this information? All of these will be looked at. This is a relatively new field, but whatever data is available in this domain, we will discuss. All the important findings we will be discussing in this. So, that is how we will wrap up the course. So, the key takeaways of course will be the language and society interaction at various levels in terms of social, macro and micro social aspects, in terms of speaker oriented perspective, language oriented perspective, and other things. And of course, we will also supplement that understanding with ethnographic account of that relationship. So, that is where this course will try to give you some a bit extra compared to what language society interaction typically means. So, we will try to enhance the your experience in the course by bringing in data from across the world, different languages, different communities, different cultures, as how they look at language, what is the function of language in that particular society. Language does not have the same function across societies. So, the role of language and the role of the speaker of a particular language, all these differ. So, ethnographic account will hopefully will give you a slightly nuanced understanding of the entire thing. So, in a nutshell, we can say that this course will give you a understanding of a slice of what it means to be human, to be a social animal. Humans are social animals primarily. So, we use language to to create contacts, to maintain contact, as well as to do many other not so positive things. So, all of these are part of being human, and some of those things we will be able to discuss in this course. It is a 8-week long course. So, whatever is possible, as much data will be possible for us to include in the course material, we will include. And so, the course material will be, the slides of course will be there, and each of the modules will have adequate references for you to look up. And the evaluation will be like this. If you are familiar with the MOOCs platform, you will already know we will have weekly assignments. So, each week we will have assignments, and also we will have one final exam at the end of the course. So, that is how the evaluation goes. Queries and doubts you can always ask in the portal. There are students who will be helping you out with this. So, you can post your questions and doubts and any other extra information you want to you want to follow up on whatever you want or whatever your queries are, you can always post. We will try to get back as quickly as possible. Also the courses have interactive sessions with me. So, once in a while we will have, I will be able to meet you directly through virtual platform. There you can bring your questions directly to me, we can discuss, and I'll try and answer all your queries and any doubts that you might have. So, with this very brief introduction, I welcome all of you to this new course, and so welcome on board, hope to see you there. Thank you.